me was
hello.
Take a bite of Stay Best Self yogurt, and you'll taste a deliciously smooth.
Coming off of Krypton.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of. Hello, and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man, and today we're talking Superman episode 3, Superman and Lois episode 3, and we have a lot to talk about. And I wanted to start off today with a just basically a brief look into one of the writers who was fired, Nadria Tucker, because it's something that's going to come up later in my review.
I had some, I'd worked with Jeff Johns before, and so I met him, knew him. And when I read what Ray was saying about Jeff, I believed him, and I amplified, his story and retweeted him. And Ray saw that and saw that I was also having some bad experiences with some people involved with Warner Brothers, and just wanted to get together and kind of talk about our experiences and see what they had in common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I did take some screenshots before we started recording, because one of your tweets so this is a public tweet. I'm not leaking anything, so nobody can yell at me like you're putting her private things out there. No. She tweeted this, and her Twitter's public. So it says, I haven't spoken to Jeff since the day on Krypton when he tried to tell me what not a black thing.
Okay, so I'm going to go back into that eventually, and we'll look at that. I've already done a long video on this, so I don't want to focus too much on it. And I want to focus more on the episode. And what I want to say about the episode is I really liked it. I think this show is getting better and better. I think it's a quite sophisticated show for the CW. I enjoy it tremendously. I like the portrait of Superman that Tyler Hoechlin is giving, and he's becoming quickly one of the best Supermans. I think, if he keeps at this level of his depiction of Superman, he might be the second best Superman, because, as much as you want to say, I don't think Henry Cavill has really got a good foothold into his Clark Kent yet. And I don't think, Brandon Routh was doing anything apart from a Chris Reeves impression. And then there are just others who just aren't really, that good. And Tyler Hoechlin really has obviously shout out to Smallville, but he was basically playing Clark Kent, right? But I think my favorite thing about this show at the moment is just that depiction of Superman by Tyler Hoechlin. But I want to go into just an overview of this week's episode. So this is really around these two sons, Jordan and Jonathan Kent. It was delving into that. And I think, one of the things that I said is going to be pivotal for the success of this show is Jordan and Jonathan Kent really working, because they are really the young kids who are they're really the path into a younger audience. The audience, are the audience going to stick around to see Superman as a family man, as a dad? Because Tyler Hoechlin is doing a hell of a job. But teenagers don't want to watch shows about their parents. They want to watch shows about themselves. So really, it's up to Jordan and Jonathan to be compelling enough to really carry this show forward. So in this episode, they were really dealing with the aftermath of Jordan last week. By the way, this is a spoilers review, but they were dealing with the aftermath this week of Jordan not being able to control his powers, and finding out that he's in fact not anywhere near as powerful as Clark Kent. or Superman, because of his human DNA or genetics. He finds that out at the Fortress of Solitude. Now, what this leads him to do is he's going back to school as normal. Clark decides to trust him to go back to school as normal, and he ends up joining a football team, right? And I'm going to stop the story there, but I'll say this, that that's one side of the story, and I'm going to come back to it in a minute. But the thing about this side of the story that I think, as I said, there's going to be a lot of improvement on. Now, the actors, Alex Garfin and Jordan Elsis, that's weird. Jordan is playing Jonathan and Alex is playing Jordan. That's weird. Anyway, the actors, Jordan Ellis and Alex Garfin are getting better, but they are the weakest teenage actors in the show by a country mile. And Alex Garfin, who plays Jordan, who is the more darker, depressed, he suffers from anxiety disorders. He's particularly annoying in places, and in places he's very, very hard to watch, especially when he's being, he's shouting at Clark Kent. He's talking to his mother and Clark in a way that I used to talk to my mom, actually. But maybe that's why it annoys me, because it reminds me of myself as a teenager. And I know it's realistic, and I get it. As a teenager, teenagers, we are annoying, and we come across as petulant and spoiled and ungrateful. But nonetheless, this is going, over the edge. The acting isn't there to pull it off in a sympathetic manner. And I don't know how much teenagers are going to relate to that, or just be, it's almost like seeing teenagers through an adult's eyes rather than seeing teenagers through their own eyes, right? Like, where you don't just treat them like petulant children. But this is really like petulant children. And, Clark is trying his best. Lois is trying her best to keep these kids in check. And they just have these outbursts, particularly, as I said, Alex Garfin, who is asked to do, I suppose, a more difficult job than Jordan Elsis, who plays Jonathan Kent. But particularly him, he just comes across as very irritating to me when he's when he goes off on one of his outbursts. And I know it's dealing with mental health issues and all of this kind of thing, but maybe they want to lean more into that and less into these kind of erratic outbursts that just seem unfair. You find out your dad is Superman, right? And he's going around saving people, saving the world all the time. And your response is, just go out there and, and do what you always do, and just go out and, leave us and not, don't be there, even though really you were working and being Superman at the same time, trying to help people and support your family at the same time. And then he even blames him, Clark, for getting fired. I'm like, Jesus, you're gonna blame your dad for being fired from his job when this really terrible person has taken over, who is Morgan Edge. We'll get into him later, and essentially has let your father go, or fired him very unfairly. So again, I know what they're going for. And they're trying to show a side to Superman and his family where they're not perfect. They're not just this, little Superman unit where everything is happy and sunny and all of that. But you really need a good actor to kind of pull that off, because Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch are doing a hell of a job. And really, I'd say Alex Garfin, out of all of them, is letting the side down. Jordan is a lot better. But they did improve this week. I'll give them that. The second storyline, which is a less, actually, Wale Parks as Captain Luther didn't show up this week at all. and although I enjoyed this episode more than a lot of the rest, I did also very much miss his presence. I think he's really interesting. His back and forth chess playing with Superman and Clark Kent. So it was it would have been nice to see him again this week. Second plot line. Let me deal with the Lois plot line first. Now, the Lois Lane plot line with Elizabeth Tulloch is interesting. Again, spoilers, so I'm going to be spoiling the show. Her storyline is really, really interesting. Just to make sure everything's going fine. Oop. Yeah, her storyline is really interesting. If you're there, hi, by the way, if you're watching. But her storyline's really interesting, and I think that's where the mystery is kind of getting into. Who is this guy, Morgan Edge? Now, he's played by Adam Rayner. And I haven't seen before, but he's in the show. And so basically she's investigating, doing a Lois Lane thing, investigating some kind of activity that's happening with him. And it ends up that she goes to a place where some guy who's been sent by Morgan Edge to kill one of the town workers, or one of the people that work for Morgan Edge, of investigating. And it ends up that this person that that is about to be killed by one of Morgan Edge's men, this woman, it turns out that the person who's trying to kill her has incredible superpowers. So Superman comes along, tries to take this guy out, and this guy's almost stronger than Superman, it seems. And it's only when Superman is able to use his powers that he's able to ward this guy off. And then there's another person later on in the episode who seems to display more Superman powers, who's connected to Morgan Edge as well. So again, the mystery that Lois Lane was trying to solve was a really kind of interesting thing. Like, what is this guy Morgan Edge trying to do with this town? Why does he have people who have superpowers? So all of that was really intriguing, and I'm looking forward to find out more about why he has people who working for him that seem to be displaying superhuman abilities, and specifically abilities that Superman has. So that bit was an interesting bit. Now I want to get to the main event of what I wanted to talk about in this episode. So I'll talk about it with Stacey Farber, who plays Leslie Lane, I suppose. She is no, not Leslie Lane. What am I talking about? Now I'm forgetting Superman's original girlfriend, Lana Lang. So she plays Leslie Lang, Stacey Farber. No, that's her mother. So anyway, that doesn't make sense. She's Lana Lang. So where's Lana Lang? Lana Lang's daughter. Anyway, so the person who's playing Lana Lang's daughter, Eliza, there we go, I think, is it? No, 2 episodes. Eliza. Okay, it doesn't seem like it wants to play. Lana Lang Cushing. Oh, this Lana Lang, the person who plays her daughter, is one mixed relationships in the CW TV shows, in which an ethnic minority is dating a white person. And so it's kind of interesting that that Nadria Tucker actually talks about some of the issues she had on set in terms of racial, insensitivity, where she was mentioning things about how Black people were being depicted on the show, and that she was worried about the depiction of Blacks and ethnic minorities, but both in terms of the lack of representation and in terms of, how villains were being treated. Now, I went against her, and I still am absolutely against her on Captain Luther, who is Wale Parks. And I say that's a compelling role. It's fleshed out. He has various dimensions. He has motivation. So it's a good character. It doesn't matter if he's a bad or good person. It's an interesting role for a Black actor to take on. So there should be no complaints there. However, the other role is played by a very, very good another very good actor, who is Fritzi Klevner's Destin, who is in the first 3 episodes. So remember that my critique isn't just about how he's been depicted, but that this is the end of his story, at least for this season, if not for the rest of the show. So he is played as a villain who is a bully who's dating Lana Lang's daughter. He's in an unhealthy relationship with her, in which he is clearly quite aggressive toward her and toward anyone who's interested in her. He's clearly very possessive as well. And she ends up breaking up with him. So of all the CW shows where you've had mixed relationships, whether it be on The Flash or or other shows, you've always seen that anyone in a mixed relationship, when it's a white man and a woman of color, that it's always presented as, this is a nice, healthy relationship in which they know their boundaries, they know, all of these things. And it reminds me also that Nadria Tucker did mention that on the Supergirl show, where Jimmy Olsen was supposed to date Supergirl, that they changed that because they suddenly became uncomfortable with Supergirl dating I suppose a person of color in Jimmy Olsen. So no healthy relationship has been shown between a Black or an Indian guy and a white woman. Now, I might be wrong about this, because to be fair, I don't watch the CW shows because life is too short and they're all shit. But I didn't like this part of the show. I really didn't. I thought it was in bad taste, because the bullying or really doesn't have any further dimensions to them other than being an asshole, and aggressive and violent and a bully, somebody who preys on weaker people. Now, I've had a conversation with a couple of people on my it's subscribers of mine who are always great and always so I want to shout out actually to I want to give a shout out to Vishal, who's always commenting on my videos, and I always enjoy his comments. And I had a little bit of back and forth with him about this character, and he said, in the end they make up and that makes it fine, but the way they make up, so Jonathan in this episode, as I said, joins he goes back to school with Clark, Superman's blessings, and he's immediately confronted by Fritz Kleven's Destin's character on the show, whose name is Sean, and he's like, every time I see you around, of his girlfriend. And then he basically goes on to attack Jordan, push him up against the wall and threaten him until Clark comes in and saves him. So up until now, you've got this typical bully. Jordan then joins the football team, which Sean is on, as a typical jock, aggressive, ultra masculine, toxic, violent, predatory, all of the terrible things that usually are depicted. But this is the only black kid in the school, and it looks like, and that's how they've decided to portray him, as a violent menace, essentially, to society. And Jordan plays football with him, and he's challenged to a face-off with this kid, with Sean. And because of Sean's superior Kryptonian strength, he's able to overpower, obviously, Sean. And then from this, Sean, Jordan apologizes to him and picks him up and says, I'm sorry for trying to kiss your girlfriend or whatever. And then Sean, the character Sean, agrees and says, the character Sean makes up with him and says, okay, and shakes his hand. And that's supposed to be a resolution to that particular issue, in which, the character is, okay, he's a reasonable guy because he accepts the apology. But to me, that doesn't show any redemption. That doesn't show any remorse. That just shows that this guy has realized he's outmatched and outpowered by somebody. So really, he can just go on to a next victim who's weak and prey on them and be the same kind of menacing figure that he is. Now, I don't mind black people playing these roles at all. I don't think it says that the show is racist or anything like that. I just think they might want to be more mindful of doing this. If you're going to have a character like that, and you're going to, and you end up casting a person of color, perhaps just give them a little bit more depth, like something to show why they are like this, to show that this isn't an innate thing that all black males are like. Like, look, I imagine that they weren't casting for a black person. Like they didn't say that this bully could have been anyone, and this guy came in and he nailed the audition, and they gave a black person a job, and I'm happy. So that's important. There's a guy who's from this show. He's going to improve, and he's a good little actor. So hopefully he'll go on to more roles that have more dimensions. But nonetheless, why I wanted to mention this is to show that what Nadria Tucker was saying did have some validity and merit looking at this episode. So I just want to say that it's not, you can't just dismiss her after looking at this depiction, especially knowing that this kid is in for 3 episodes, that he's just a nasty individual who plays on stereotypes of black high school guys in a current situation in America where, there's kind of issues that have long had to be dealt with that are being dealt with now in terms of race relations, especially with police brutality and all of this kind of thing. Depicting young black males like this, I think, is really problematic, especially if you're not going to explore their characters more and develop them and show that there's more than one side to him, that he isn't just this, or there's a reason that he's doing this that goes beyond, that he's not that intelligent person, that and that he's jealous of nerds, or that, something like that. I think that there has to be just more depth to these characters. But that was my main issue with today's episode. Apart from that, I was kind of all right with it. And I wanted to finish off with what Nadria Tucker had to say about her experiences with Jeff Johns, because I'm going to just mention that in terms of the showrunners of this show.
And I just read that and I went, sir, you are many things, but you are not Black. Like, that's not, what is it with, like, oh God, I will never understand people like that where it's just, I don't understand.
This is Lady Genevieve, and she's a really cool interviewer and person that I have a lot of respect for. But I want to just highlight that she's being much more confrontational than Nadria is. And when you hear Nadria talk about this, I actually really have started to believe her side of things. Now, I still think that she's being a little too sensitive and a little not being somebody who looks towards resolution of these kind of conflicts. And I think that's to the detriment of everyone, because I don't think Jeff Johns learns from anything. I don't think she learns from anything. I don't think anyone, dealing with ignorance, to face it with just saying, okay, you're ignorant, so I'm not going to talk to you, is the worst way to deal with, a type of racism that, as I said, is not an overt racism. It's not a racism that comes from malice, but actually just comes from lack of knowledge about, Black experience. So you're going to hear what happened to Nadria Tucker now, or what allegedly happened to Nadria Tucker, because we still don't know. But here we go.
I understand that, like, it's, the complete and the complete and utter inability to just stay in your own lane. Like, you clear the very notion, like, so I'm not Black. We've covered this. I cannot imagine telling a Black person what is or is not a Black thing. I might ask a question, or I might say, oh, I've read this. Like, is this true or something? I wouldn't. I mean, yeah. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about that, but it is something that you tweeted, and I really.
By the way, I don't think it's, you can tell me without me being incredibly offended that you don't think something is a Black thing as being from another race. I don't think that's a majorly offensive. I just think, again, it's unthinking, and I wouldn't. I would come back anyway. We'll see. I'll give my last thoughts on this once she's told her side of the thing.
Like that interaction, it boiled down to we were talking about hairstyles on the series, and we had a number of Black actresses on Krypton, right? And one of the actresses was changing, her hair was changing between scenes, and Jeff didn't like that. And I proceeded to let him know that, culturally, Black women tend to change our hair a lot, extensions. Like, one day I could have a fro, the next day you won't recognize me. Like, changing your hair is a Black thing. It's not a continuity thing. It's not a problem. It's a Black thing. And he's like, no, it's not. So having had that interaction with him.
So first of all, let's just go over the actual problem here, that from Jeff's perspective. I would imagine that what he's talking about as a continuity thing, and where he's thinking about it, is from scene to scene, the haircuts are changing, and that people will be distracted by that if the haircut, especially if it's within a single episode, kind of changes a lot. So I can understand that. Having filmed things before over days and weeks, you want to keep hairstyles and everything fairly similar, especially within one continuity or timeline of a story, like, say, an episode. That being said, I think it's incredibly unthinking and unthoughtful to say something like that when somebody of color has opened up enough to bring up a kind of issue, or to bring up, to kind of let you in, and say, oh, maybe you should think about it from another perspective, right? So again, this is something that I would hope somebody could have a discussion about, but we'll see what happens.
In addition to some other, similar levels of just bullshittery, that when I saw Ray's story about his experiences, I was like, okay, that checks out. Oh, completely.
Yeah, because
Okay. So he decided not to talk to him again because of this. And I don't think that was very helpful. I don't know what else had happened to her. She said there was some other bullshittery. I don't know if that was racial in nature or just Jeff being a douchebag or whatever. All of this is alleged, obviously. But what I do respect is that she has the willingness to come out and talk about it openly and actually say things. And I wish Lady Genevieve had have really pushed her to really discuss more, specifically with Jeff Johns, because there are people like me who go out and defend him because we don't hear the actual story and we don't know what's actually happening. We just hear vague kind of allegations with no substance behind them, and are expected to just condemn people from simply from that. And I think if she had have came out and said this at first, it would have been much better, anyway, so that people can make their own judgment as to how bad this infraction actually was. But also, I really think that that it's a space to open up discussion, and maybe he himself could have read that and said, "Oh shit, maybe I should think about what I'm doing when I do these things." So, what I want to say, like to finish this off, is that I haven't completely changed my mind on Nadria in terms of I don't think Twitter is the place to take up these battles, and especially if you're not going to provide evidence and all of this kind of stuff. But I also don't put her in the same level now as somebody like Ray Fisher. She's coming out and she's saying what her problem is. Now, I don't agree that all her problems were insurmountable and she couldn't have dealt with them perhaps in a way that hopefully she could have kept her job. I don't know if it's true that her writing is good or bad. I haven't, obviously I haven't been able to see it to be able to, make that kind of assessment. But nonetheless, she's come out, she said what her problem is, she said what happened to her, and she's let us now be able to judge how bad it was. And I hope that people will respect her for that and not attack her and call her, all kinds of things that I've seen her be called online. So I wanted to finish off with that because I had done a video on Nadria before, and I just saw some of the problems that she was talking about in this show. But again, I don't think they were insurmountable, and I wish she had have kept her job so that she could have had those difficult conversations, or found a way of keeping her job so she could have had those difficult conversations, but done it in a way that it's not like, it's like you have to come at it with hostility and anger. You can come at it with reason and logic, which I'm sure at times she did. I'm not claiming that she wasn't reasonable and logical in the way she's kind of discussed these things, but certainly it doesn't reflect the kind of things that I'm seeing, from Ray Fisher's side, which are much more vague and vicious and without foundation from what he's described to us so far, and how long he took to actually just come out and say what happened. But anyway, that's me. Thanks very much for listening to this discussion, and I will see you on the flip side. Yeah. Oh, like, comment, subscribe, please. Love the comments. So if you can comment, that would be great. But also, yeah, see you on the flip side, and love you 3000.